Hi, this is a 1972 Ligne Roset Togo sofa designed by Michael, I think it's Ducroy. Um, it's been around for about 40 years. This one's 45. It was really one of the first ones made. A friend of mine got it from France. It's looking a bit tired now. Basically, what I want to do here is remove the covers and reset the inner foam core. The panels have come apart. The glue has lost its adhesion. So really, at this point, that's all I'm hoping to do is take off the quilted covers, wash the quilted covers, and re-glue the foam panels, and then put it all back together again. Having said that, that is still quite a process in itself. Just a side note, there is a company in France that will, if you pay them, I think it's around $2,000 a cover. I think it's really not that much difference from a corner 2 or 3 seater. You send them your old covers, and basically they will unpick the main parts, like the base there with the Ligne Roset sign and the little tags, and they'll resew them onto the new covers. The purpose of this is you get a new cover and you remain you get the authenticity and the resale value of the sofa. Basically, after 40 years, the foam has become a little bit tired, but I'm utterly surprised at how good the quality of it is. I'd say the outer quilter cover is lesser quality than the foam. Bear in mind, you buy these sofas these days, and basically for a 3-seater, a corner unit, and a 2-seater is what I have is about 15,000 Australian dollars. On the second-hand market, about 6,000. That's Australian dollars. So they're worth restoring. The process is they're all buttoned in, so you just lift the tags up like this and just cut the thread, and then pull the button out from both sides and collect all your buttons. So you can see here I've cut the other side already, so you just basically pull them out, and once you pull the buttons out, you really have quite a lot of play. The Togo sofa is really, design-wise, in essence, it's just a big pillow. Once you take the retaining buttons down, retaining buttons out, you basically can just like move the cover around quite freely. Getting the cover off, there is a bit of a process. What you have to bear in mind is that, especially with these older ones, you definitely don't want to tear the outer quilt, and the inner core is actually quite flexible in itself, so you unzip it at the base and you basically bend the foam and allow the cover to come off with less. You still require a little bit of effort, but you don't try and pull the cover over the foam. You push the foam to allow the cover to have release tension and come off. And then when putting the covers back on, you just do the opposite process. Generally, the way that I found to do it that creates the less stress, and really the only way really to take the covers off, is you unzip them and you find the bottom left or right where you sit, that corner, and then you bend that in and peel that off like you can see here on this photo, and then you go to the other corner and put your hand in underneath the quilt, pull that foam in, and then just allow and then push off the cover on the other side. And really that's the most difficult point. As you can see here, this foam has started to come apart. That was before I've taken off the cover, and that's the main reason why I'm really doing the job, is to bring all of that structural integrity back to the sofa. I'm surprised, I mean, this has quite a bit of wear and tear, this sofa, but all said and done, for almost a 50-year-old sofa, it's doing very well. So I've actually glued all the front part here. You can see it almost goes like in a wavy kind of formation at the front, and I use Sika glue, and so basically I just roll that on and then realign the the foam where I want it to go, and then just use tape. So here you can see, I really haven't applied it yet, the glue, but I'll just take these bits of tape off and I'll show you. All the brown is the old glue. So even if it, the panels still are stuck there, I kind of just like pull them up because they're really, they're there on a wing and a prayer basically at the end of the day, so it's worth re-gluing them on. Just be careful not to tear the foam. So basically I've re-glued all those down and then applied tape over it. On that center area there was a little bit of a tear, and you can see here at the top, same thing, just re-glue all that in. Better safe than sorry, so it will last another 50 years for you. There are 3 types of foam density apparently. The front one is more of a silicon type of foam, and then as you go further back and underneath it's a more denser foam. As you can see here now, the roller tape, there was a bit of tear, so I just filled that in with a bit of foam of the same density and just glued it, and that will take care of that problem. It's rare to get tear in the foam, I think, like that. I think this is because it was a big 3-seater, it was a problem. Here you can see the side panels. They're the ones that came off, but when you put them back on, notice how where the brown is, that's where the glue was, how I roll over the foam to create that arcing type of effect. And basically that's what you need to redo, and you can see how I'm doing it. The brown is where the glue is, so it's a pretty good guide, and I've already applied the glue and it's become tacky, so now it's a matter of just like putting it into shape and then just putting the tape there. And yeah, this is what we want, this beautiful form back, and this strength and structural integrity. So really that was the main purpose of the whole project. It's quite laborious, but I think the results are really worth it. You get that lovely design back again. So here you can see I've done all around the top, and it has that beautiful arced curve. So with this new glue, it will, last another 50 years, I'm sure, as long as the sofa doesn't come to any calamity. So here I've finished, and it's all dried, and I brought it outside, and I'm getting ready to put the covers on. As you can see here, I've ensured that all this is all nice and firm, and I've applied extra glue to the top and corners and front areas where there's going to be a lot of wear. You can see here there's little bits of maybe more glue than I needed, but definitely we've got our original shape back, which is what we want. And with modern glues that are nice and flexible and much firmer, it really should last a long time. I mean, maybe at some point down the track I'll recover them, but at least now I know that my foam core is all back and set. It was worth it. I mean, all up to do the 3 sofas, the glue alone was really a couple of $100. The thread was cost me a bottle of wine to a local upholsterer. I'm sure you can buy it online. And the actual long threading needles, they're the thing that are going to cost you as well. I got them from Etsy, and they're 60 centimeter long, like tufting needles, I think they were called. And 2 of them, God, how much did I pay? It would have been around $100 for 2 of them. So anyway, at this point I've put the cover back on again, and I'm using these small needles to align where the buttons have to go. Now this is really, really important before you start threading, to get everything in alignment. So I've used these long needles and I've put them through, and the good thing about the old foam is you can kind of feel it too, where the button originally was, so you can kind of adjust the quilt cover to get it just right. Anyway, spend a lot of time looking at that and basically getting your quilt cover in the right position before you start putting the buttons back on. Basically the way I do it is I do the bottom half of the seat, the very front, the first three buttons, and then the second, and then to the base, and then I start from the top and work back down the other way. But basically, I get all of my my buttons for the first bottom front three, and the base, all six in alignment. So basically the bottom, I want to see where the needle's going to pop out. So with the base, I don't really have to adjust anything, so I know exactly where the button should be. So I use pins so I can see them. You have to close the quilt, so you can't look back in again. So you put your pins there. But on the side where you sit, you do the first front three ones, and that is basically your 0 point for how the quilt sits. And then I've made measurements when the quilt cover was off about the space between this first button and then the second inner button, then the third inner button. And once you have that information, it's quite easy. You just measure it and get your buttons right. So this is the thread. It's a 1 kilo thread, and it really has to be quite strong, stronger than normal tufting thread. So if you can grab it in your both hands and yank it and it breaks, it's not strong enough. It needs to be strong nylon thread, like catching a marlin type stuff. So here you can see the buttons, where the buttons are supposed to be. This is a really good indicator there. So now I've pulled the I pulled the quilt cover at the base part on. I've done the first three buttons. Now I'm checking my measurements, and well, this is what I originally did at first, but you'll have these measurements, and I've worked out this measurement here. That's how far the quilt cover should be from this button to this button. So that's my first setting of the quilt, and as you saw just previously, I'll close up the quilt and do those base. And just a note, I'll do the base pins and I'll do the back outside pins, because they're the areas that I really have access to before I close the quilt cover. And here what I'm doing, I'm putting those pins in the back, and I'm just feeling the indentation of where the original button was, and then I know where the buttons were on the outside of the quilt, so I'm just jiggling and aligning the quilt to get it perfect. And yeah, like I said, you should really be spending quite a lot of time making sure that your quilt is perfectly aligned on the bottom, on the outside back, and then you adjust in from the outside in as you slowly go. So here I've got the needle thread, and I've put the needle through, and now I'm applying the first button. And so you just pull it through and just loop it over, and then you just push the needle all the way through, and that brings the thread through. And then you'll have one of those white buttons at the base, and when you put the thread through on the other side, you loop them through from opposite directions like this, so that way you can just yank them and anchor down the buttons, and then basically just spin that thread around the button a couple of times and do various knots, and then just cut it off, and you're done. So that's one done. And that's the other side. So you want it to kind of indent in. So now I've done all three here, and I'm ready to do the second bank. So as I was saying before, this first bank is integral. So I've got the first bank right, and I know from the first button to the second button is exactly 20 centimeters. So that's where that pink pin is. But the buttonhole is about another 5 centimeters forward of that, where it's starting to wear. So I've actually got to bring the quilt back a bit and give it a bit more play. So this is why your measurements are just so important, to get the feel and droop, I guess, correct. So now I've done that, I've got the droop right, and I've put retaining pins in there, and now I've threaded those through and I've done bank number 2. So, and then I did that with number 3 at the bottom, and now we're pretty much done. I've done the back as well, and once you've got all of that stuff in, you can start readjusting the fabric much more liberally because your buttons have anchored everything, and now you've got your play done perfectly. And that's how you do the Ligne Roset sofa. Thank you. I hope this was helpful.